Oh, that spin class was brutal. Well, you can try using the Buick's massaging seat. Ooh, yeah, that's nice.
Can I use Apple CarPlay to put some music on?
Sure, it's wireless.
Pick something we all like. Okay, hold on. What's your Buick's Wi-Fi password?
Buick Envision 2021.
Oh, you should pick something stronger. That's really predictable.
That's a really tight spot. Don't worry, I used to hate parallel parking.
Me too.
Hey.
Really outdid yourself.
Yes, we did.
The all-new Buick Envision, an SUV built around you, all of you.
Since 2002, Empowerment Resources, Inc., a nonprofit organization, has empowered more than 1,500 youth and adults in Duval and surrounding counties through its programs Journey into Womanhood, Girls Mentoring, Life Skills for Teens, and Parenting Education Coaching. To get involved with programs, volunteer, or donate, visit www.empowermentresourcesinc.org. Follow us on social media, facebook.com/empowerment.resources and instagram.com/empowermentJAX.
It's never too early to plant the seed, to share the tradition, and instill a sense of pride in your HBCU with your little ones. HBCU Pride and Joy Children's Boutique helps you share your school spirit with a wide selection of adorable kids' apparel and accessories officially licensed from your favorite HBCU. Visit hbcupridejoy.com and follow us on all social media at HBCU Pride Joy on Facebook and Twitter.
The Cuvée Group is a Florida-based marketing and training consulting firm. We help businesses communicate to their target audience and engage them in conversation. We also help to expand their audiences, which will ultimately result in growth for those organizations. In addition to being a certified constant contact specialist, my colleagues and I are also certified in John Maxwell Leadership Principles. We use these proven principles to conduct workshops, training, and private coaching sessions for individuals and companies looking to take things to the next level. Contact us to schedule a free consultation. Issues today, don't delay, call Cuvée.
Supermarket sushi, really?
No. Wait, Troy, you work here?
I'm never not working. Like Head & Shoulders Scalp Shield technology, up to 100% dandruff protection, even between washes.
Never not working, huh?
Oh, Troy, you're such a good teacher.
Yeah, I know. Never not working. Never not working. Never ever not working.
Are you serious?
Never not working. Dandruff protection that's never not working. Head & Shoulders Scalp Shield technology.
From novice to aficionado, find yourself here. High quality cigars plus personal customer service. Slow Burn is Waco's only mobile cigar lounge, featuring a meticulous, curated collection of premium cigars. Visit our website, www.slowburnwaco.com. That's www.slowburnwaco.com.
Are you hungry for authentic Caribbean food like jerk chicken, oxtail, red snapper, shrimp, tofu, and rasta pasta? Well, find your way over to Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock in downtown Atlanta.
Them belly full, but we hungry.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, open daily from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. And on Friday and Saturday, we're open till 4 a.m. Come to Mango's and put some spice in your life.
Oh, we've got a good thing going.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock in downtown Atlanta. For more info or directions, call 404-698-3992 or log on to mangoscaribbeanrestaurant.com. For instant coupons, text MANGOS to 313131.
Tell your mama hungry, papa hungry, brother hungry.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, authentic Caribbean cuisines.
Open up the door, tell your mama hungry.
For 200 years, Montgomery, Alabama has been making history by people who had the courage to stand up for change. Today, this riverfront city has been reborn, embracing the past and looking forward to the future. From the National Memorial for Peace and Justice to the stage of the Alabama Shakespeare Festival, this is where history was and is made. We are proud to call Montgomery home, and together, we can be the change.
Yeah. I love my HBCU.
And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won one. Yeah. I hope my team they won one. Yeah. Man, I hope my team they won one. I hope my team they won one. Yeah. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Ville, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with this hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball, So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Ville with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. As you see, Mike Washington and Charles Bishop are out on assignment. So we brought in one half, the other half, if you would, of Brian and AD of Sports Rap as the visiting professor today. We have Professor Fulford. How's it going today?
Man, it's I'm blessed. It's a pleasure to be here with you, Doc. Pleasure to be here.
You say I have a tip my cap to you, but you know I'll leave that right there for a lot of folks to ponder on that just a little bit. So welcome to episode 243 of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show and podcast. The show that's covering the sporting HBCU dash for all things HBCU sports from institutions large and small, from NAIA to the NCAA. We share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture, HBCU athletic aesthetics, to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs. With my co-hosts Mike Washington and Charles Bishop, we're filming from our home studios and sending the signal live to our KCOH 1230 AM studios with Texas Radio Hall of Famer Ralph Cooper in a beautiful home at Texas Southern University from Houston, Texas. You know, as I tip my cap, a lot of folks, I don't know if they believe fat meat greasy. I put on my Dr. Clark shirt. And for those that may not recognize, let me pull this up just a little bit, make sure everybody can read. He once said, and I'm quoting, "I only debate my equals. All others, I teach." I'm gonna park that right there. And I'll leave that just in that good space. So now that I've kind of set the stage, I want to get your framework because it's all out there and everybody is trying to figure out. But I said it straight what it said. I can confirm the SWAC commissioner has reached out to Tennessee State Athletics Director, and thus the proverbial ball is in the big blue Tigers backcourt. What came to mind when you read
that? First thing that came to mind is I believe the athletic director, Mickey Allen, is the name.
Yes, Dr. Mickey Allen.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Mickey Allen. I was surprised I recalled that because I got so many names and things in my head. I'm impressed that I just remembered that. I thought to myself, put down those hockey plans and pick up the call from Dr. McClellan. Stop with those hockey plans ASAP. Put that on the shelf back in a cupboard somewhere and really start to address and think about what opportunity is in front of you. Second thing that came to mind is I thought it was very interesting. Dr. McClellan, who a very savvy, very astute commissioner. The fact that he would and does, I believe he does nothing without a purpose behind it. The fact that he would want that out is telling in itself. Now, I could go off on a tangent and speculate, but I don't want to do that, not on this show. Unless you just say, oh, go ahead and speculate, Brian, because you sound like all the other lab listeners.
Go ahead. The floor is yours. You are the visiting professor. It sounds like you want to open with a little lectern, your own lecture. So what better place to do it than the lab? We'll give you a couple of minutes to opine.
So, again, you start thinking, well, there's two thoughts here. One is, if he's opening this door to Tennessee State, I mean, obviously that potentially could bring a 13th team. Nobody likes the number 13. It's an odd number for starters. And then two, it's unlucky. So it makes you say, who could be a 14th team member?
I wonder who.
Tip of the cap to you, Doc. So that brings a lot of speculation, a lot of people's, just because look, there's not, you got the two other schools that ran off to go be a part of someone else's Kool-Aid because they ice must be colder. So they ran off and did that. You got a host of other schools on the East Coast that probably are outside of the footprint of what the SWAC wants to do. So that leaves a handful of schools, in the Georgia area. I'm just saying. So that was first thought. Now, my second thought, this is going real deep conspiracy theory, Doc. So follow me here.
Mm-hmm.
Could there be somebody in the SWAC, not going to say who, but somebody in the SWAC thinking about making moves, possibly leaving the SWAC? And so Dr. McClellan, being ahead of the game, is saying, okay, well, I can find a suitable replacement, and there's one right north of Alabama and Mississippi that would be a good fit for our footprint, just in case you, whoever you are, think that, your roses bloom brighter and smell better than everybody else's, can go ahead and move on out of the SWAC and move up to another level. Now, that's deep conspiracy theory, Doc. That's for me. I watch a lot of TV shows. So that last one, please don't hold me there. Don't grade me on that one. But that's like the last page of the paper when you just you saw the movie The Pelican Brief, or the Pelican Brief, where he just put some theory out there and then all of a sudden got killed for it. So I pray I pray that theory does not hold true, that last one. But I just threw that out there because that is a thought that's in my head. I'd be curious to see if any lab listeners had a similar conspiracy theory on their mind with that last one.
I like a good conspiracy theory. And hopefully, like the Pelican Brief, I certainly don't want to make sure that you get clipped in all this. So we're going to hold off on that part. But that is very suitable. A lot of things out there. I can confirm on this that a actual invitation was not made. So there was some speculations on that. I can confirm that an invitation was not made. And I'll park it right there and let everybody get some additional thoughts. But I thought I'd come on and just open up, take all that stuff there. But one of the news that I also wanted to talk about, as we kind of leave it there, and we'll see what the lab listeners think about, whether it's in terms of conspiracy theories or other theories or hypothetical hypothesis, whatever they want to look at, we'll take it there if need be, and see what's going on, what's next. Turkey Day Classic between Alabama State Tuskegee renewed for 3 years from HBCU Game Day. Some people want to put Tuskegee as the 14th member if Tennessee State comes in. Certainly could understand from the prestige of Tuskegee in terms of what they've done in the past, successful-wise, the football programs, and to some degree, there are other sports they've dipped down over the last 10 years. The biggest thing that I did want to kind of let people know when you talk about expansion before I get into this 3-year contract, which starts in 2023 and obviously goes into 2025, the new contract means two will meet in the historic 100 Turkey Day Classic in 2024. I like that. You talking about marketing something, you should have caps, T-shirts that are with a official 100 Turkey Day Classic logo that is registered and trademarked so they can generate some additional revenue off it. I do want to give some love to Dr. Jason Capel, the athletics director of Alabama State. Oh, by the way, there's a thoughts that he may be looking for a basketball coach. What's out there? I won't confirm or deny that one, but I have some insights on that as well. Quote, the Turkey Day Classic is the premier HBCU Classic game hosted on Thanksgiving. Dr. Cable continued, quote, playing Tuskegee in the game creates a dynamic experience They cannot be rivaled. This game brings family, friends, and alums together and provides a significant economic impact to the city of Montgomery. I want to thank President Morris and Athletic Director Reginald Ruffin for their willingness to work with ASU to get a multi-year deal completed. It is a great day to be a Hornet. I look forward to this rivalry for the years to come. The two teams last met in Turkey Day Classic during 2021 season, the first time the two had met in the Classic since 2012. The deal renews a game that has been played since its inception in 1924 and has been played 97 times overall. The two teams have met in all but 12 of the Turkey Day Classics all time. Pretty good information. Mm-hmm. Any thoughts on the Turkey Day Classic renewal? You think it's a good idea or it's just another point of reference? What are your thoughts on that?
It's interesting from the Tuskegee side, and I definitely can't wait to talk to my partner, AD Drew, who's very tied into Tuskegee. And I say that because Reginald Ruffin is now the AD and the football coach, coming from Miles College, where he was competing in the playoffs. And we know that recently Tuskegee, for financial purposes,
playoffs?
Right, playoffs. Tuskegee, for financial purposes, opted back in and really are sort of moving themselves away from the playoffs to sort of generate some dollars to help with a lot of the things going on. So them agreeing to this and running it for the next 3 years essentially takes them out of the Division II playoffs and opens up the door for those financial opportunities that I guess, and it seems like they need right now, you know. And so that's an interesting angle, you know. And I wonder, did Coach Ruffin know that this was a possibility coming in? Because I wonder, you know, he seems like someone who really wants the playoffs, wants the opportunity of the playoffs, to be in the playoffs and coach in the playoffs, given where he was with Miles. And if he took the Tuskegee job with the thought that he could get Tuskegee back to the playoffs, and then all of a sudden a curveball was thrown, how's that go over? But I, you know, so I'm curious in terms of the timeline of what he knew, and what was discussed when he came on board about renewing the Turkey Day Classic with Alabama State.
Shout out to our lab listeners, including Karen Griffin, that always supports us. She wanted to make sure you understood the Pelican brief was written by a woman, Brian. I tell you, that male bias gets us every time. Appreciate the love and making sure that we straight. Chad Cooper says, Dean with the CAU hat on. Nice jacket. Thank you. You saw the cap? I'm surprised that you realized that I had a cap on. Yeah. I wonder what that means. TU is not interested in going to the SWAC. Hey, good point. I would agree. Edwin Dwight Moses said, good afternoon, Dean and Professor Forth. As you in here, shout out to a couple of more of those lab listeners before we get into it, this break. I did want to say that in all seriousness, when you talk about expansion, I think it's important for people to understand, because people tend to look at it from a football perspective, and that is obviously the one, and a lot of times it kind of rings the bell and puts everything in perspective. But it gets to a point as you're moving up and you got this FBS talk that's out there. One of the things that you're looking for in a lot of ways, the SWAC models more of an FBS model in terms of the championship game format it has, not having an automatic bid to the playoffs, and the fact that the champion of the conference goes to the Celebration Bowl. Same thing with the MEAC, other than a conference championship, but the championship team at the end of the regular season goes to the Celebration Bowl, which is a more of an FBS model. But when you get into this FBS model and the fact that they have the unique ability with the deal with ESPN, which was significant in terms of this next contract expansion that came up in terms of that money, and that's one of the reasons you're starting to see some of the SWAC schools, the SWAC in itself, create its own conference classic, if you would. Jackson State pulling out the Southern Heritage Classic. The promoter model is going to be significantly impacted because of what ESPN is paying, at least in terms of the Celebration Bowl, to some degree, the MEAC SWAC Challenge in terms of that money. It's more than increased At one time it was $1 million. It's almost up to 1.5 million. Really, it's past 1.5 million over the next 6 years to give you some indication of what you're talking about contractually for each conference. That's significant money, even when you're talking about bowl frameworks. So the next thing that you do when you're looking at expansion, if you're looking at the FBS model, I want to make sure people understand that. If you're looking at the FBS model, FCS model, a lot of times you're expanding to make sure you're at 6 or more in such a way that you can get an automatic bid to the FCS playoffs. That's one thing that you want. But when you're talking about increasing the footprint of a conference, you want to get into new markets. And that's why it becomes a little tough for a Miles College or a Tuskegee, even though they've had solid programs, one historically, one more recently. You want to get into new markets. You want to get into large markets that have television, because when you sign a TV contract, broadcast rights, that's what we're going to look for. If we quickly look at the SEC, you've seen them expand. They expanded into Texas, the last one previously, which was Texas A&M and Missouri, wanting to get into those large media markets. Why? So when they go back to the television and look at a new deal, the television side wants to know what markets are you in that's going to drive television for us to increase the money that we are willing to pay you. That's the same scenario that you want for the SWAC. So while you look at programs and look at Tennessee State and say they don't have baseball, every team in the SWAC doesn't necessarily play every sport. Now, mainly in terms of football, obviously, men's and women's basketball and baseball, which is affinity sport in this conference, is pretty big along with softball. That is something you look at. But when you start talking about the Nashville market, that becomes a significant market. If you can get into Atlanta, in terms of Clark Atlanta, that's a significant market. So when you go back to the table, when this contract's up, you're talking about real negotiating power, particularly when you can stick on top of that the academic side of this. People don't realize that Clark Atlanta is an R2 institution. That's high research. Tennessee State, many people may realize, is also R2. Well, there's already 5 institutions in the SWAC that are R2, starting with Prairie View and Southern, which were the newest members of R2 when it was announced this year. Texas Southern has been there, Jackson State has been there, and FAMU has been there. That's 5. You go to a 14-member conference, you add 2 R2s, you're talking about 7 of the 14 schools are R2 research institutions. That is significant, not only in terms of what you're doing and what it does to rebrand the other institutions, in terms of making them more marketable in terms of student engagement when they're looking at the school of choice, but also in terms of partnering these schools from an academic perspective of understanding what that looks like in the marketplace. And then you parallel that in terms of the Fortune 500 companies that you'll see in Nashville and Atlanta, and it becomes easier to get them to look at supporting you, because now you not only have these super regional brands, you have even more of a national brand that is already strong. And we're not even talking about coaches like Coach George that told you OVC was dying, that he's looking to get into it. Mickey, in terms of the OVC and his criticizing them, was the fact that he wanted more HBCUs. Well, hell, you can't get more HBCUs than the SWAC, but that may be different. He may have some other choices and other things he's looking at, but that's beside the point. But then you get into the Atlanta market, which is the #1 African-American radio market. Let me say that again, that people don't do their research. Atlanta is the #1 in the United States in terms of an African-American, Black, whichever you prefer, radio market. That's significant when you're talking about your streaming platforms, your radio broadcast rights, when you bring that in. And you book in now that you have Houston to Atlanta, Nashville, and then you have these classics that you play, that comes in under the umbrella of the classic, where you already now have these classics. Obviously, even though they're not going to play in it, but let's say you have some type of classic with Jackson State and Tennessee State, or for some reason, if it goes to the conference, they decide to stay with the Southern Heritage Classic. Now you have 5 of the top classes were all the SWAC schools instead of 7 of the 14 playing in these classes. You put all that together, you're talking about economic power and might in terms of giving the commissioner even more leverage. So I wanted to kind of park this in such a way that we went to really understand what it means when people start talking about expansion. What do you look at? And move beyond just the face mount of whether you have a good football team or not, or whether you have a couple of facilities. Because the infrastructure is one thing, but every institution that's going to make a move is going to have to invest in their infrastructure. That's a choice. That's a choice. Whether you have a president, an alumni association, a conference that decides that investing in athletics is something you want to do. It's not whether you can or not. It's a choice in terms of how much you want to. So I'll park it right there. We'll come back. We'll get a little more into the sports talk, but I did want to double down. Like I said, didn't want to get into a debate. I thought it was good that we put some things on and had a little fun earlier, but I wanted to close it out where we literally had a lecture and taught a little bit. Stick with us. We'll be right back after this break.
Charmin Ultra Soft has so much cushiony softness, it's hard for your family to remember they can use less.
Sweet pillows of softness.
This is soft.
Holy Charmin. Oh, excuse me. Roll it back, everybody. Sorry.
Charmin Ultra Soft is so cushiony soft, you'll want more, but it's so absorbent, you can use less, so it's always worth it.
Now, what did we learn about using less?
You gotta roll it back, everybody.
We all go. Why not enjoy the go with Charmin?
From novice to aficionado, find yourself here. High-quality cigars plus personal customer service with Slow Burn. Visit our website, www.slowburnwaco.com. Slow Burn is Waco's only mobile cigar lounge featuring a meticulous, curated collection of premium cigars. It's more than a mobile lounge. It's an environment and an experience rich in history, luxury, and personality. An elegant extension of any celebration occasion. It's the perfect escape and meeting place, a space where you can relax or enjoy a shared passion. Have Slow Burn plan your next big event, or before you are planning to celebrate your win over your athletic rival, you can shop our collections at www.slowburnwaco.com.
But if they want to tab, I'ma do the dab, yeah.
Oh, that spin class was brutal. You can try using the Buick's massaging seat. Oh, yeah, that's nice.
Can I use Apple CarPlay to put some music on?
Sure, it's wireless.
Pick something we all like. Okay, hold on. What's your Buick's Wi-Fi password?
Buick Envision 2021.
Oh, you should pick something stronger. That's really predictable.
That's a really tight spot. Don't worry, I used to hate parallel parking.
Me too.
Hey.
Really outdid yourself.
Yes, we did.
The all-new Buick Envision, an SUV built around you, all of you.
Since 2002, Empowerment Resources, Inc., a nonprofit organization, has empowered more than 1,500 youth and adults in Duval and surrounding counties through its programs Journey into Womanhood, Girls Mentoring, Life Skills for Teens, and Parenting Education Coaching. To get involved with programs, volunteer, or donate, visit www.empowermentresourcesinc.org. Follow us on social media, facebook.com/empowerment.resources and instagram.com/empowermentJAX.
Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, yeah, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gonna teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavill with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. We have some games going on. Obviously, you had SIAC. We'll get you some of those updates and let you know what's going on there. On the Division I side, you have some games being played. Hampton won their opening round game, but now as they move into the quarterfinals, they on the women's side, they're taking on Longwood. It's in the third quarter. For those Hampton fans out there, got a little work to do. They're down 9 points as they're down 51-40 with 3:24 left in the third quarter in terms of that matchup.
They're making a game of it.
Yeah, they're trying to get it in there. Should be interesting.
I was worried about it earlier.
Yeah, on the women's side, I can give you finals. Check this out. On the women's side, the season has closed, so we can give you finals there. We'll talk about in the third quarter where people finish, but I'll at least give you the scoring updates. You have North Carolina Central getting a win over South Carolina State, 84-74. You have Norfolk closing out the city, defeating Howard, 62-58. You have Maryland Eastern Shore, 66-48, and Morgan State, 53-47. And that's going to be interesting in terms of what that means in terms of the standings, as you have a three-way tie. Again, we'll talk a little bit about who that is and what that looks like. But you also will get a little more in terms of what's going on there. Also, in terms of a game that is concluded, which is the quarterfinals, Tennessee State, the women, they got a victory yesterday, so they played Austin Peay today, and they lost by 14. They were defeated 67-53 in that matchup. Some games that are going on now are in the SWAC, which will be interesting to see what is taking place there. You have Alabama A&M hosting Grambling. They are leading 46-40 with 7:08 left in the game. It's in the fourth quarter there. You have Alabama State and Southern in a close one, 26-25, 1 minute before halftime, 1:06 to be exact. You have Jackson State down to Arkansas Pine Bluff. You saw they had their nail bite against Texas Southern. They're in another tough one there, down by 5 at halftime. So they have a second half that they got to get rolling. They're down 39-34 to be exact. And you have a battle between Mississippi Valley State and Alcorn State in terms of Mississippi. It's also at the half, and the Delta Devils lead the Braves 23-21 in terms of that. I know this is on the women's side, so we'll get into the men a little later. But in terms of the men's, you wanted to kind of set up some stuff before we got into it, particularly for your Rattlers, as they're in their inaugural basketball season. Women's didn't do too well, so we'll stick with the men and take a deeper bite of the apple since we're talking about snakes here, pun intended. Let me know what you have to put on the table, Brian, at this time.
Well, let me first say, I would be, what a deflating thing it would be if Jackson State's women did not finish the deal and go perfect. I mean, I'm rooting for perfection. I think anything short of perfection would be anticlimactic. From a history standpoint, Doc, I'd be curious to know where this season or where this run of 3 years compares to some other great SWAC players. I mean, we're talking 2 players in Rogan and Williams, and then being led by Coach Reed. I mean, this is I don't want to say unprecedented because I'm still learning my SWAC history, but let's just say I feel like we called it UConnish. That's what we called it on the sports wrap, and so that's what it feels like. But going over to the men, right? So for FAMU, who's new into the conference this year, they're sitting at 10-7, which puts them in 4th place, and pretty much are holding on to that spot. I mean, they're let's see, a game and a half behind Southern, who still has to play 2 games while FAMU has just 1 game left. So they're and they've lost the tiebreaker to Southern. So they're pretty much locked into no higher than the 4 seed. The thing is, Grambling, who they've beaten twice, is sitting right behind them at the 5 spot. So Grambling could theoretically, essentially FAMU has to take care of business against Bethune-Cookman on Saturday to wrap up the 4 seed. The 5 seed, interesting, between Grambling and the 6 seed Alabama A&M. We're kind of rooting for Grambling State because we've beaten them twice. Alabama A&M is 1-1, but they're the hot team right now. Next to Alcorn, Alabama A&M has won 5 games in a row. I mean, so they're currently 9-7. So think about that. At the halfway point of the season, they were 2-7. Second half, they have won 5 games in a row. And I mean, look, theoretically, if they win the last 2 games, puts them at 11-7. They can get up as high as 3-4. You know, they're anywhere from 3-5 is their ceiling. So what an amazing turnaround by Alabama A&M. I don't want to see them going into the tournament. You know, stay away from the hot team. So that's why, you know, Prairie View is another hot team that you want to kind of stay away from. Down at the bottom, interesting. Jackson State currently is 7-9 with the game tonight against UAPB. And then they're battling with Bethune-Cookman. So Bethune-Cookman has something to play for when they travel to Tallahassee on Saturday, because Bethune-Cookman win, a Jackson State loss could move Bethune from the 9 spot into the tournament at the 8 spot. I think it would take, I don't know, Alabama State, let's see, they're playing Southern tonight. You know, is it possible they could beat Southern? I mean, you know, Southern hasn't been playing their best of late. They've stumbled. So it is possible. But if Alabama State loses, they're pretty much out. And then that just, like I said, that puts it on Bethune going to Tallahassee. So that's going to make, you know, that rivalry is deep, that FAMU-Bethune rivalry. So it's just going to make it that much more intensified going into the SWAC tournament. So really excited to be a part of the SWAC and actually in the hunt. And I think Rattler Nation really feels like we have a puncher's chance. We probably have more than a puncher's chance. I mean, I think there are legitimately 5 teams that have played well all season that have a shot at winning the SWAC. And I think we're one of those 5. And who knows, if Alabama A&M keeps winning, might want to say 6. So it'll make for an interesting quarterfinals in Birmingham. I'm just imploring people to go. I want to know how many Lab listeners are going. I sent a shout out to Rattler Nation. I said, how many Rattlers are going to Birmingham? You know, how many Lab listeners are going to Birmingham? Because I think on the men's side, no disrespect to the women, but I think you're going to get 4, 5, 6, 7 great games in the men's side.
I totally agree with that. I would even hesitate and say it may be 6 deep in terms of legitimate teams that can come home with the crown. But I certainly could see where 5 is that number. It's going to be fascinating. Stick with us. We'll be right back as we enter into halftime. With this next break, we'll come back for the second half of the show and enter into the third quarter. Stick with us. We'll be right back after this next break.
It's never too early to plant the seed, to share the tradition, and instill a sense of pride in your HBCU with your little ones. HBCU Pride and Joy Children's Boutique helps you share your school spirit with a wide selection of adorable kids' apparel and accessories officially licensed from your favorite HBCU. Visit hbcupridejoy.com and follow us on all social media at HBCU Pride Joy on Facebook and Twitter.
The Cuvée Group is a Florida-based marketing and training consulting firm. We help businesses communicate to their target audience and engage them in conversation. We also help to expand their audiences, which will ultimately result in growth for those organizations. In addition to being a certified constant contact specialist, my colleagues and I are also certified in John Maxwell Leadership Principles. We use these proven principles to conduct workshops, training, and private coaching sessions for individuals and companies looking to take things to the next level. Contact us to schedule a free consultation. Issues today, don't delay, call Cuvée.
Supermarket sushi, really?
No. Wait, Troy, you work here?
I'm never not working. Like Head & Shoulders Scalp Shield technology, up to 100% dandruff protection, even between washes.
Never not working, huh?
Oh, Troy, you're such a good teacher.
Yeah, I know. Never not working. Never not working. Never ever not working.
Are you serious?
Never not working. Dandruff protection that's never not working. Head & Shoulders Scalp Shield technology.
Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Ville inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Professor Fullfoot, as we have Dr. Ville's inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. They're out on assignment. Professor Drew, that also sits in oftentimes he's out on assignment, and he certainly would call this Miyakish, as you have 3 teams that have tied for first place. I had to give him a shout out. You have Morgan State at 11-3. You had Howard at 11-3. Norfolk at 11-3. Norfolk State, that is. Coppin State at 9-5. Maryland Eastern Shore at 7-7. South Carolina State finished at 4-10. North Carolina Central 3-11. And Delaware State goes winless for the non-conference part of the season, as they're 0-23 and 0-14 in terms of the conference. Can they have the biggest upset of the year and get their first win in the tournament, as they will face the number 1 seed? It'll be interesting to see who's actually the number 1 seed, because I told you it's Howard and Norfolk. Well, let's get in and see what they did in terms of the conference race. You had, in terms of those teams, you had Norfolk defeating Morgan State. So write this down, 64-52. See if we can figure some of this out. That's Norfolk winning 64-52. Morgan State also defeated Howard in the first matchup, 67-61. In terms of what's going on with those teams. But as you get into the rematches, see what took place there. You have Morgan State defeating Norfolk State the second time, 51-48. So they have the 2-0 edge over Norfolk State. But you have Howard that defeated Morgan State in the second matchup, point differential. So overall, that means they're 3-1. And so it'll be interesting to see when you start looking at Howard, if you would, what did they do against the other two in those matchups? Where did they finish when you talk about their standing as they went? Let's see. Howard, as we said, they defeated Morgan State in February, but they defeated Norfolk State. So that's 2 wins back in January. When you talk about that Norfolk matchup, let's had that one. Norfolk defeated them. So that's 2-1. The second round, when you look at that Morgan State matchup, Morgan State beat Howard, so they 2-2. So it looks like Morgan State will probably end up being that number 1 seed, and then it'll come down between Norfolk State. I think Howard edges out Norfolk State, so they may be the 2nd seed, and then Norfolk the 3rd seed. We need to check that a little closer in terms of the tie breaks, but it's going to be interesting. I'm not sure if that really matters in terms of the first round matchups, because you saw who was at the bottom. But it could be interesting in terms of what does that mean when you have the 1 versus 4 and 2 versus 3 when you get in the semifinals. Just your overall thoughts in terms of seeding and matchups when you have a 3-way tie in those type of scenarios. One team matches up pretty well this way, but not with the other team. Getting in the tournament, do you think that's a big deal? Do you buy in those kind of things? Or are you like, hey, let's lace them up and just play?
I think basketball is so much about matchups.
I'm glad you said that. Thank you.
It really is. It really is about matchups. But with that said, when it comes to these tournaments, you have to consider the fact that there's only one bid. Only one, as good as Howard, Morgan, Coppin, Norfolk State, only one of those 4 are going to the NCAA tournament. And nobody's really playing for the NIT. Everybody's trying to get to the NCAA tournament, okay? So I think the matchup the matchup aspect is nullified a little bit with the sense of urgency that everyone has. So, yes, you have to survive that opening round, because clearly there is a top 4 and a next tier. The team that I would be worried about, I would hate that. Well, obviously, Coppin is the 4. And they would have to play Maryland Eastern Shore.
So that's a 9-5 versus 7-17.
Right. And so if there's going to be an upset, it might be there. But I really think the top 4 teams are legitimately good teams. Howard, Morgan, Norfolk, Coppin, all legitimate. And they played that way all year. Coppin sort of come up on the short end of the stick these last couple games. That's the only reason it's not like a 4-team race, right? So I think you can't sleep on the fact that the semifinals, if it plays out with the top 4 seeds, are going to be really interesting. And I fully expect them to come down to the last bucket or two. Look, the MEAC had a great championship game last year, a game that, Howard, I'm sure they're kicking themselves. They're looking for a little redemption after essentially blowing a game that they had won. They just couldn't close it out at the free throw line and open the door for A&T to take it from them. So, but then, like I said, Morgan, Norfolk, Coppin, all coming for Howard this year. And so who knows? It will be interesting if Morgan is the 1 seed and Coppin is the 4. There's that rivalry there. So again, what does 1 versus 4 mean in the Battle of Baltimore Part 3? Means
exactly.
Nothing.
Now, Morgan State won both games, but the second game, to your point, was a 2-point game, 62-60 or something like that. So the first one's 12 points, so they beat them pretty handily. But yeah, it's always hard to beat a team, 3 times in a year unless you really are that much more dominated. But even on the road, they only won by 2. So it'll be interesting to see somebody was out. What did that look like? But you get those kind of things. So, but even in a rivalry game, it doesn't matter. You can kind of throw that out. So it'll be fascinating here. Let me give you some more updates in terms of getting to the end. You have Alabama A&M with a 3-point lead over Grambling, 13 seconds left. Ooh-wee, that's going to be a good one. Valley has pulled away a little bit from Alcorn as they're getting into the third quarter with 5.5 left, 38-27. Alabama State, as I told you, is still at the half leading Southern 26-25. You have Arkansas Pine Bluff still at the half, as we said, leading Jackson State 39-34. They're A&M, Alabama A&M has went final 55-51. Get into some of these standings to see how they shake it out. Jackson State 16-0. Obviously, they're in that class. They've clinched the number 1 seed in the regular season championship. But you have that fight between 2, 3, and 4. Alabama State is 11-5. Southern is 11-5. A&M just gone to 12-5, obviously, in terms of that. You have Texas Southern 11-6. Grambling at 9-7. They fall to 9-8. PV is at 9-8. UAPB is 8-8. FAMU, Bethune-Cookman, Valley, and Alcorn, they're all outside of the tournament. So the top 8 are in. The question is just where they finish. So it's going to be interesting when you just kind of come into the race. Any final thoughts on the SWAC women's side? I know you have a couple of games that will get closer tonight, but it really goes down to Saturday. So I'm not sure if there's much you can say about it, but I did want to give you a chance just in terms of those 4 teams that are packed up all currently with 11 wins, obviously, and it will jump to 12 with the win today. But 3 of them at 11-5, and then Texas Southern 11-6. As you start closing out this season, it's fascinating to see who's going to get that 2nd, 3rd, 4th seed. I think what you want in this case, oddly enough, you want to find a way to be 2 or 3. You do not want to be 4.
No, correct. Right. You have 4 teams fighting for 1, 2, 3. You have 4 teams fighting for the 2 and 3 seed. They do not. No one wants to be the 4 or 5 because that just means you end up with Jackson State in the semifinals. You don't want that spot. You're like, let me be the 2 or let's fight to be the 2-3. So, this Southern Alabama State game. I don't know where that game is broadcast at. I hopefully it's on Alabama State's YouTube, but after the lab, I would be tuned in because the second half of that contest is going to be a knockdown, drag-out fight. And then let me see. We already know. Let's see. Texas Southern doesn't play tonight, so they're kind of the odd team out. And then they have
the big rivalry game with Prairie View, so they're sitting on the side along with that Bethune-Cookman and FAMU, which they're out on the women's side.
But Alabama
we'll get to talk about in the next quarter on the men's side where that FAMU and Bethune-Cookman, as you said, gets interesting. A&M finished up, but before we take this break, we got 4 minutes left in the fourth in the quarterfinals between Hampton and Longwood. It is a 7-point game. Longwood still is leading 63-54. Can Hampton, the Lady Pirates, make a late run to make this interesting in terms of what's taking place there? Stick with us. We'll be right back as we get into the fourth quarter and talk about the men's side of these tournaments coming up. We have some teams, Big South, as well as the OVC in the quarterfinals. We'll get a chance to maybe talk a little bit about that. We'll get into MEAC as those games are going on now on the men's side, get you some interest. Norfolk State has already closed it out, but you're looking for seeding on the rest of the team, and fascinating what's going to take place in the SWAC. Stick with us. We'll get back in the fourth quarter where things really get interesting as we are closing in on the tournament. Put your dancing shoes on. It's time to go dance. We'll be right back after this break.
From novice to aficionado, find yourself here. High quality cigars plus personal customer service. Slow Burn is Waco's only mobile cigar lounge, featuring a meticulous, curated collection of premium cigars. Visit our website, www.slowburnwaco.com. That's www.slowburnwaco.com.
Are you hungry for authentic Caribbean food like jerk chicken, oxtail, red snapper, shrimp, tofu, and rasta pasta? Well, find your way over to Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock in downtown Atlanta.
Them belly full, but we hungry.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, open daily from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. And on Friday and Saturday, we're open till 4 a.m. Come to Mango's and put some spice in your life.
So we've got a good thing going.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock in downtown Atlanta. For more info or directions, call 404-698-3992 or log on to mangoscaribbeanrestaurant.com. For instant coupons, text MANGOS to 313131.
Tell your mama hungry, papa hungry, brother hungry.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, authentic Caribbean cuisines.
Open up the door, tell your mama hungry.
For 200 years, Montgomery, Alabama has been making history by people who had the courage to stand up for change. Today, this riverfront city has been reborn, embracing the past and looking forward to the future. From the National Memorial for Peace and Justice to the stage of the Alabama Shakespeare Festival, this is where history was and is made. We are proud to call Montgomery home, and together, we can be the change.
Charmin Ultra Soft has so much cushiony softness, it's hard for your family to remember they can use less.
Sweet pillows of softness.
This is soft.
Holy Charmin. Oh, excuse me. Roll it back, everybody. Sorry.
Charmin Ultra Soft is so cushiony soft, you'll want more, but it's so absorbent, you can use less, so it's always worth it.
Now, what did we learn about using less?
You gotta roll it back, everybody.
We all go, why not enjoy the go with Charmin?
Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon'
Shout out to the SIC as they're going with their tournaments. Men's and women's getting hot. Obviously, last week was all about the CIAA. This week it's all about the SIC. CIAA did a great job in terms of social media marketing, which it'll be interesting to see in terms of SIC. It pushed them to have to push the envelope even a little more than what they're doing because the CIAA did so well. I think you kind of mentioned that. But let's get into a big matchup. In terms of quarterfinals, A&T able to win their first game there as they got out of the opening round, if you will, the first round, as they like to call it over there in the Big South. They take on Longwood that won the regular season, if you would, in the Big South North. They were 15-1. They are 23-6 overall. Can you name the team that gave Longwood their long conference loss? Professor Fulford?
I think they fell victim to Club Corbett, as the folks like to call it out there in Greensboro, North Carolina, where they say Aggie Pride all day until it becomes annoying to you. But yeah, they caught the Club Corbett fever, and they lost 70-62. So that's got to give A&T a reason to feel really good going in to this contest. And the first time they played them, they only lost by 8. So, and that was on the road. So They definitely are not and for A&T, look, coming off of losing 4 in a row after that win to Longwood, it says a lot that they got that win the other night in overtime because they could have easily folded the tent. I mean, when you get when you lose 4 in a row going into the tournament, I've seen teams that I love, they fold the tent at that point. So it shows the fight of A&T. And so I think Longwood's probably wishing that A&T would have lost that game because that's probably the last team they want to see in their first game of the tournament. So it should be an entertaining game.
Yeah, and this is a Radford team that split for A&T, but they played close. A&T got Radford the first time 73-72. That was back January 8th. And most recently they had one February 26th where A&T got a little lost again. This time 62-53, so they got beat up. But when it counted in the tournament, at least in terms of the NCAC, they got it done. So I'm fascinated too in a lot of ways of what this will look like in terms of the tournament on Friday. I'll keep a little eye on what may take place there. We'll see what looks forward. Then you have Tennessee State, Southeast Missouri. Southeast Missouri leads early in that contest, 13-7, 11:31 to be exact, left in that game. When you talk about Tennessee State and East Missouri in terms of that matchup, when you talk about the season, what took place, to give you a little insight in terms of what got done for Tennessee State, what I'm looking for in that matchup is fascinating. Let me get in to see what those games were. In terms of Tennessee State, they defeated Southeast Missouri back on January 8th. Oddly enough, same time that A&T played Radford. They won 95-84 in that matchup. The second time, though, Southeast Missouri just pounded Tennessee State, 85-63. It was a weird game because I watched that. I had a chance to kind of watch it. And Tennessee State was really playing well, like most of the first half. And Southeast Missouri made a little run, got it down respectable. But in the second half, they just turned it on. It was like Tennessee State just disappeared, couldn't do anything right. So it's going to be interesting to see what takes place for the rest of this game today between these teams in terms of the tournament matchup. What are your thoughts, Southeast Missouri State and Tennessee State? Can Tennessee State get it done in the quarterfinal?
I think they can. Look, I think it's possible. 4 or 5 matchup, 2 even teams. I think they can get it done. What's interesting, though, Doc, have you seen the bracket layout for the OVC? Now, this is an 8-team field, right? An 8-team field. The 1 and 2 seeds get a double bye. It's crazy. You talk about setting yourself up to send your best team to the NCAA. Hint to HBCUs. I'm not saying I'm going to soapbox about my thoughts about postseason tournaments and what the MEAC and SWAC have done. But I find it interesting that the OVC has it set up where Murray State, who many people, prognosticators, are really talking about Murray State being a top 4 seed in the NCAA tournament. Well, they could be a 2-bid team even if they stumble in the opening game for them, which is the semifinals. Imagine the 1 and 2 seeds first game is the semifinals. You're 1 game away from the championship. Whereas the team like Tennessee State, who's the 5 seed, would have had to play 3 games just to get to the championship game. It's an 8-team field, the same number of teams that are going into the SWAC. Just it's just fascinating how the OVC has modeled. I don't think I've seen a model like this because I saw it and I was looking and I was counting. Okay, they must have like 9 teams. They have 7 teams. And then I'm looking and I'm saying, wait a minute, it's 8 teams. Oh my God, they gave the 1 and 2 seed a double bye. That's outrageous, but it's smart, in my opinion. You set yourself up to send your best teams to the NCAA.
Yeah, you make some really good points when you talk about that matchup. I think I've seen it before in the Southland. The last time I've seen, and this is when they used to play in terms of the home, they would play their top team, top seed, regular season would play at home, basically. Then they went to Katy for a while. but they did the double byes a couple of times where the 2 teams got a double bye. Your 3 and 4 teams got 1 bye. They already made it to the quarterfinals, and you let your other teams play what they call first round games, which means the winners would go and play in the quarterfinals, and the quarterfinal winners would play in the semifinals with those teams resting. There's the give and the take with that, though. You know, you got other teams that are lathered up and playing a couple of games, at least one, before they play you. So some people talk about that, where they would rather play that opening game. So, you know, I like the idea that you're setting it up for your best team. But if it's not meant to be, sometimes it's just not going to happen no matter what you do. So it is interesting to see what formula. It would be even more intriguing to take a deeper dive, if you would, to see in that format how many times does the 1 or 2 team actually play in the finals, and what does that look like using that thing. But this is a tournament in terms of OVC, though, where they've had Belmont, who has been a top 25 team, obviously Murray is a top 25 team. So they've had some teams. So they've always kind of put themselves where if the top team doesn't get out, that they can get that second team in. And this is a conference that previously rewarded teams for playing certain schedules. So it'll be fascinating to really look to see moving forward with all the teams moving and leaving the OVC, what kind of model they would move forward. Let's talk before we get into the SWAC and kind of close things out. MEAC, you have fascinating matchups. Again, Morgan State at Coppin State, South Carolina State at North Carolina Central, Howard at Norfolk State, Delaware State at Maryland Eastern Shore. As we said, Norfolk State has clinched everything, but you do have some intrigue between the next 6 teams, where you have 4-game difference, right? But in terms of how those seeds may move up 1 seed based on the game that's played today, be interesting. You have Howard at 9-4, North Carolina Central at 7-5, South Carolina State at 7-6, Morgan State at 6-6, Coppin State at 6-7, Maryland Eastern Shore at 5-8. Delaware State is at 0-13 in the conference, 2-24 overall. Just to let you know, unlike what we saw on the women's side, they have won some non-conference games. So I'm fascinated with these matchups in terms of these games where you have South Carolina Central to see where that will shift in terms of the final seeding. But let's get into the SWAC before we close it out and see your thoughts. These games that will be played a little later today. You have Grambling at Alabama A&M, Arkansas Pine Bluff at Jackson State, Mississippi Valley State at Alcorn, Southern at Alabama State. One of the ones I wanted to kind of focus on when you're talking about Jackson State is they're trying to get in the tournament. Obviously, you got out there the news that their head coach has resigned or will resign, and then there's thoughts about Mo Carter moving from Alabama State. How do you think that's going to affect these teams with Alabama State facing Southern, and you're hearing all this mix? Don't know whether these coaches have said anything to their players, student athletes. Jackson State, are they going to play harder to make sure they give a chance for the coach to go out, you know, on a positive note? What about Alabama State? Obviously, they want to get in the tournament. How is that going to affect these kind of last couple of games? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, look, Doc, I've had other things going on in my life. So you're breaking news for me that Jackson's, where have I been? The fact that I totally missed the news that Jackson State's head coach is, you said he's retiring or resigning?
Yeah, he's resigned. He basically retiring. Yeah, he's saying that he's not going to move forward with the program. He basically resigned. My understanding that he actually resigned early in the season, but it's just coming out now that this is it for him.
Wow, and so yeah, and so wow, that's that's tough to say. I mean, I got to imagine if the players know that, I would imagine guys are going to be. You know,
that's Coach Wayne Brent.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily being official, but I've heard a little bit, and I think usually in some cases where there's smoke or fire. So it'll be fascinating to see what effect that will have in terms of them moving forward.
Yeah, and that would mean that would be 2 openings in the state of Mississippi for men's basketball programs. Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, because you're talking about Lindsey Hunter Obviously was put on suspension there.
It makes you wonder, does he, you talk about Mo Carter, has Lindsey Hunter's record at Mississippi Valley State sullied him or made him less attractive to his alma mater?
No doubt. I think that's without a doubt. But especially when you talk about the way that he's leaving Valley, makes it even more challenging because you don't know actually what went down there. So not only in terms of his record in question, but now you have maybe some questions in terms of what else took place. That makes it even more challenging. So yeah, I think it makes it real hard for Lindsey Hunter to be able to move over there. And a lot of folks were not very happy with Ashley, with Brent, in terms of when that extension was made. A lot of people wanted them to go with Lindsey Hunter, and he moved forward and took that Valley job and got to coach his son, but unfortunately it didn't work out down there.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll go with players playing hard for the retiring coach over players wondering whether their coach will be coming back. So in that respect, not a good move. Watch out, UAPB. Jackson State's got 2 home games. So, Jackson State's got a chance to finish with 2 wins. 2 wins gets them in the tournament, or in the SWAC tournament. I mean, they hold off Bethune-Cookman easily with 2 wins. And so I think
so that's amazing when you think about the 2 teams that won the regular season last year, co-champions, were undefeated, went to the semifinals. In terms of Jackson State, lost to the eventual champion Texas Southern, while Prairie View went to their 3rd championship in 4 years. Remember, 1 year it was Council, and Texas Southern got revenge from the previous time that Prairie View and Texas Southern played in the championship, where Prairie View won. But there's potential that, to some degree, that both of these teams, if not at least one of these teams, cannot be in the top 8 and make the tournament after being top 1 and 2 seeds, which is amazing. Prairie View may have the toughest road depending on what Bethune-Cookman does in their final matchup, because Jackson State, Bethune-Cookman both have the head-to-head. Jackson State had had the 2 victories, so they're 2-0 against Prairie View, and Bethune-Cookman had that 1-point close matchup, but it was the only game played, so they have that victory. So if it's tied between these teams, those teams have the edge, which means Prairie View is going to be in a position, if Bethune-Cookman beats FAMU, and FAMU has a lot to play for at home, not only is it a rival, but they're trying to fight for seeding. So that's a fast one to keep your hands on. But the thing about it, for the Prairie View Texas Southern game, it's the nightcap. So they will know going into the tournament what position they will be in. So that's some fascinating. Any final thoughts on that before we close out?
Has FAMU and Bethune made the SWAC a better men's basketball tournament? Yeah, we talked about football, we talked about baseball, all these other sports. We didn't talk about really basketball, feeling the impact of FAMU and Bethune-Cookman. And I would say the answer might be yes. I mean, FAMU is now a basketball school. We've always been. We were just quiet. About it. But
I like it.
And Bethune has upset some people to the point where they have made themselves known. So yeah, it's pretty interesting to see how impactful FAMU and Bethune's entrance into the men's basketball landscape has sort of, as you just brought out, taking 2 of the top 3 teams and sort of flipped them on their head going into the SWAC tournament. So I'm looking forward to it. I really wish why couldn't this tournament be next week when I'm on spring break? Because I would just be chalked up. I would just be kicking my feet up in Birmingham watching these games. So anyway, I'm gonna have to try to watch as much as I can. So I'm looking forward to the SWAC tournament.
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm going to flip over and watch some of these games streaming in the various platforms, but I do want to give a shout out. I'd be remiss if I didn't shout out Alcorn State Braves in terms of what they got done. Great season thus far, and they're basically a victory away from clinching it. So it'll be fascinating to see what the Braves do in terms of their basketball season. A lot of good basketball being played in that area. Big matchups, and they can do it against the rival. So that's going to be kind of one to keep your eyes on in terms of what's going on in a lot of ways. Coach Bussey coming out there, getting it done, starting it off with Mississippi Valley tonight. So I'll keep my eyes on that one. With that, that'll do it for us today. Thank you for listening to Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. I am Dr. Kenyatta Cavill, the Dean of HBCU Sports, coming from inside the lab in the College of HBCU Sports with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Again, we want to thank you for listening to Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Special guest, Professor Forefoot, bringing in. Make sure you catch the Sports Wrap with Brian and AD as they do it on Wednesdays and Sunday, giving you the great news in terms of all levels of HBCU sports, specializing in a lot of ways on the mid-major programs, as I like to call it, from NCAA and the NIA. You can't get better news than what they do in terms of depth coverage they give, and they're able to bring in some of those coaches for interviews. If you haven't caught them from last Sunday, check them out. They had some great clips for those championships coaches that got it done at the NIA level, inside as well as the CIAA for that matter. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab 1 on Twitter, Inside the HBCU Sports Lab on YouTube and Facebook. Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavill. That's DrKenyattaCavil, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Never know when I'll drop some more confirmation news, so you might want to follow because I have that plug, as they may say. You never know as I tip the cap what's going on, because as I said, I don't debate. Dream big, continue, no doubt. Dream big, continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon. Brian.
Course.
Roy.
Lecture.
Dismiss.